I've grown more in the last 3 years than I would argue I've grown since I've been a teenager. A week ago, my psychiatrist asked me to send him the link to the Crucible Project's sign up because he wanted to recommend 3 other men go. When I was diagnosed with ADHD, he said, "How many times do you go to this 2-year group?" I said, 3 times a month. He said, "We'll meet on the 4th week that you're not because this is working. Keep doing that."
Welcome to the Crucible Project Podcast. The Crucible Project is a nonprofit organization committed to creating a world of men and women who live with integrity, grace, and courage, helping them to fulfill their God-given purpose. This podcast will discuss important and sometimes difficult topics while delivering practical life applications with men and women who are currently practicing this work. We are igniting Christ-like change in men and women through experiences of radical honesty and grace.
Welcome to the Crucible Project Podcast. We are excited to have you here with us today. We are joined today by Garrett Buchanan. Garrett is a man out of our Chicago community. He's got just a really cool story. Garrett, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but hey, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'll acknowledge I'm nervous and excited, and I'm not sure which one is higher, but here I am. I'm 49. I live in Chicago. Actually, I live in Oak Park, and glad to be here.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. Garrett, what do you do?
I am a financial planner, but I've got a sexy name. If you look me up on LinkedIn, they call me a senior wealth advisor. But
Ooh.
I'm just a financial planner with gray hair.
How long have you been doing that?
Since 2007.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell us a bit about your background? Where did you grow up and
Sure.
what has life been like up until now?
Philadelphia, born and raised. On the playground, I guess, is where I spent most of my days, if you recall that song. So yes, I am actually from Philadelphia. My family is still a Philadelphia area for the most part, other than myself and my brother. Philadelphia up until I was roughly 12, which surprisingly enough connects me to a lot of the, I'll say, obstacles I've addressed in this last 3-ish years or so and more years of therapy. But went to school. I was a nerd out of water, and I pretty much flocked to a book as a means of safety, as a means of learning about a world I wish I lived in, but I didn't live in because of, this, that, or the other thing. My upbringing wasn't turbulent in any meaningful way. I had, 3 brothers and sisters, went to school, Amherst College, and came out here 26 years ago to work at a bank downtown. And roughly '05 was when I feel like I finally found something that I wanted to do versus something that would pay me to pay my student loans and keep a roof over my head. And so I guess I wouldn't have described it at the time, but I would say purpose and a twinge of passion came online when I decided to pursue the financial planning. And so Crucible Project, I had a really good friend, Rashad, who for roughly, I would say 15 or so years, our lives sort of are echoes of each other. We went to the same church, and he and I were really good friends. My ex-wife, his wife were really good friends. And so it was a natural synergy for our families to sort of be in similar orbits. And as you might imagine, when one good idea was being done by Rashad, who was very proactive in trying to build and maintain and grow and sustain his marriage, and I was doing everything. But I would get suggestions either from Rashad or from my ex-wife around what I could be doing that he had just done and why haven't I chosen to do it yet. One of the things he suggested was doing a Crucible Project. I said, well, what is that? He, of course, said something along the lines of, what happens at Fight Club stays at Fight Club. So I just knew that, do I trust him? Yes. We're both sort of cerebral, sort of heady. So I knew if he survived, I'd survive. And 3 years later, I finally went.
So when was it that you went on your weekend, and what was it that brought you to finally saying yes?
That date, as it would happen, was March of 2020. I think I signed up sometime either right after or right before Christmas. And I was excited. My marriage was on its last legs, and I was hoping to, for lack of a better description, to just invigorate some life into this, what felt like a listless existence of mine. And so I wanted to go. And then for roughly a year-ish, the pandemic denied that. And I could have had an opportunity to do an online one, but I wanted to do it in person just because I was burned out of Zoom and the stuff. And so I finally did it in August of 21. But by that point, I was 8 months into a divorce. My ex-wife had the courage to acknowledge what I wasn't able to, and that was our marriage was over. She filed, and I was served on my 45th birthday in January of 2021. Yes, it was an interesting day. I answered the door thinking I'm getting a birthday present, and I was served by a sheriff. I was more alone than I've ever been in my life with the month leading up to going.
Thanks for sharing that. When you went through the weekend, what came up for you while you were there?
One of the guys that I was in my 2-year program with, when I asked him a personal question, he answered with a quote that is attributed to Henry David Thoreau. And it's something along the lines of, many men live lives of quiet desperation and go to their graves without singing their song. And quite frankly, as soon as he said it, I was like, that is me. And I wanted to sing my song, and I didn't quite know what that was and that I wasn't singing. I was doing something I loved. I loved my ex-wife, but I wasn't living with purpose, passion, or power. I was just going through the motions. And I wanted that to end, but I couldn't have answered it that way before the weekend was over.
That makes sense. Yeah, and you mentioned your 2-year program. So you did your initial in August of 21, and then from what I understand, you jumped right into the 2-year program after that, which is a pretty big commitment. So what pushed you to say yes to that journey?
I'm a planner at heart. I did the math. I was like, okay, how much is it? Okay, now it pays for 4 weekends and it pays for coaching, and I've reversed engineered how much it would cost. Literally, so my weekend is over. I go to my graduation roughly a week or so after that. And at my graduation, I literally went up to Bill and I said, I don't need to go through all of those, baby step stuff. Just tell me when I can start the 2-year program and who I need to call. I verbally signed up at my graduation. They were going to ask you to be vulnerable and candid about what's going on in your life. I was in therapy trying to save my marriage. And so I was used to doing that. And this didn't feel all that different. And unbeknownst to me, I was in for a rude awakening.
Tell me more.
About a month, maybe 2 months in, I say to my 2-year group, no, I feel like something's been off. And they said, well, what are you going to do about it? And I'm used to people just like, oh, okay, that sounds bad. Empathy, but no sort of, bring you a mirror to the stupid things you might be saying and doing nothing about. And I agreed that I would go to see a psychiatrist. And I intentionally had picked a psychiatrist versus a therapist or a psychologist because I wanted to know if I was, quite frankly, broken or crazy, for lack of a better description. I agreed to a goal of going to a psychiatrist within 30 days, and I did. And so I walk into the psychiatrist's office. I still see him, by the way. And he said, brilliant move. I've never had a therapist do this before. He said, we're going to put 4 hours on the clock because I don't want to get to know you slowly over the month. I want to like a deep dive. I was like, great. But I don't know what we're here to talk about. So I just picked some random stuff. And lo and behold, there are things that I've been working on my 2-year program. Masculinity, am I enough? Am I lovable? Do I have what it takes? And how to avoid this massive thing that sort of is ever present in my life called fear or false evidence appearing real. And as I was talking about all of those things, he said, can we add one more to the list? And I said, sure, what's that? He said, ADHD. And I immediately said, I'm not stupid. He said, I didn't say you were. But let's talk about ADHD.
Yeah.
And I learned that the man I thought I was, and quite frankly, the man I judged myself to be, he died that day. And it took me a while to mourn the loss of the man I thought I was. One of the things I said to the 2-year group, which is why they challenged me to go, is that they said, well, what do you mean? I said, I feel like I've been off since probably my mid to late 20s. And I couldn't tell you what. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, I just feel like something's not quite perfectly fit. And one of the things I told my psychiatrist in that conversation is that literally at least once a day for going on 30 years, I'd said some version of to myself in my head or verbally, why are you so effing lazy? Meaning I wasn't doing enough, or I didn't meet the goals of the people that were in my life who had high expectations of me. And I, of course, had higher expectations of myself. And I never quite hit the mark as I would have described it. And as it turns out, there's a reason for it. I'd been living with ADHD all my life.
Yeah.
Went to an Ivy League school, got straight A's my senior year, but I have ADHD. And it doesn't mean you're stupid, apparently.
Right. Yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of information that's come out, even in just the last 10 years about ADHD and what it actually means. Because, the era, I think you said you're 49, right?
49, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be 39 in another couple of months. Growing up as a kid, there was a big stigma around what it meant to have ADHD and the perception that you have in your mind of if you picture a kid with it, let alone I wouldn't even know what to picture an adult with ADHD to look like because it just wasn't talked about. I didn't know that adults could have it. And so similarly, I was diagnosed at 36 with ADHD. And that was a journey because first I went to a psychologist who did the testing and he just said, oh, you're just a mom. You have a lot going on in life. I was like, really? That's it? Saw someone else and she's like, no. You for sure meet every marker. You have ADHD.
I am in many ways the poster child of ADHD. I'm
Mm.
very high functioning. And when we'd probably been talking for maybe 2 hours at that point, and he played back to me, not my stories, but the pieces he grabbed from my stories of me essentially describing to him that I have difficulties with organization and timeliness and remembering things that matter to me and matter to the people that I love. For whatever reason, I have difficulty with. That's just the beginning of it all. And I'm still on the journey of not just understanding what it is, but accepting it. And quite frankly, I'm not there yet. I'm still working on it. I still want myself to be something that I'm not. And acceptance that I'll always have some aspect of it and deal with it is difficult. The hardest part is acceptance without excuses, because I can very easily just say, well, this is me, deal with it. And I'm doing my best not to do that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. One of the things I've learned about ADHD is that it comes with a superpower of being able to give attention and focus to a variety of things, sometimes in ways where those neurotypical people can't necessarily keep up, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I know that you serve on the leadership team for our Crucible urban community in Chicago.
I do.
So what's that like? What's distinct about how the men in that community show up there?
The most obvious thing I love about it is because it's a growing grassroots cause. Every weekend that you staff, there's at least 50, if not higher percentage of men that you staffed the last time with. And so there's a consistency, and you really get to get connected with people's lives. I'm actually in a Marco Polo virtual group with, I think there's 7 or 8 of us. We started it as a Lenten chat, and we've never stopped. And all of them are from the urban community. There's a lot of diversity within the diversity of the urban community, but some themes that tend to come up consistently: father wounds because of the absence of a father, wondering if you're enough or if you're man enough because you didn't have a role model or have a moment where someone you loved, in many instances your own father, telling you you are good enough, you have what it takes, and I see you. A lot of violence, too much violence. I'll leave it there. There's a healthy Latino population that we serve and who serve with us. It's not just, Black people. There's a number of people in that community who are worried about being deported, worrying about how do they become legal. They may have been here for years or decades, and just see a man as an individual and not as a political point or as an opinion, but to see a man and to see that he's broken in a similar but different way to how I might have been broken. I would say, bar none, the community helps you to see into the shadows of people's lives, the good and the bad, and to grow and do life with people. On many of the other weekends, unless you staff a lot like I did, and as you might imagine, when you're going through a divorce and you're in a house built for 5 and you're only living as 1, I think the first year I did 8 weekends.
Wow.
2 of them were my own participation weekends for second levels, and all of the others were staffing. And then I eventually figured out you can't do 8 weekends a year or you'll burn out. And so my goal is 3 to 4 per year. And this year I actually have burned out, and I've only done the urban one in the spring, and I've already verbally told my girlfriend and the Crucible team, the urban team specifically, that I will not be doing any more weekends this year because I need to reset. I often do as an apologetic gesture for being late or not doing what I promised myself or what I verbally promised you. As from an ADHD perspective, I have a strong desire to overperform and people please, because I'm aware of what I should have done and that I did not do it. You get to address a whole bunch of that. I had this naive belief that when you staff a weekend, the men are there to do their work and you support them. And oh my goodness, you will do work too, whether you're on the other side of that staff participant line or not. I've grown more in the last 3 years than I would argue I've grown since I've been a teenager. I was proud. A week ago, my psychiatrist asked me to send him the link to the Crucible Project's sign up because he wanted to recommend 3 other men go. When I was diagnosed with ADHD, he said, "How many times do you go to this 2-year group?" I said, 3 times a month. He said, "We'll meet on the 4th week that you're not, because this is working for you. Keep doing that."
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah. So with your work, you told us that you're a senior wealth advisor with Northern Trust. That entails working with executives and families, I'm assuming, to help with their financial lives. How has Crucible helped shape your approach to that type of work?
So I've been promoted 3 times since I did my initial weekend.
Wow.
I'm much more successful now than I was then for a couple of reasons. The most clear and obvious one is that I've gotten out of the way of my own success. In some form or fashion, I've been approached from a leadership perspective to either be in sales, to lead a team, or to be the face and to present. I said yes occasionally to the presenting one, but I said uncategorically no to the other two. And I lead a team of advisors now. And I would probably, if I'm being honest, I'm 80, if not 90% sales, and I'm an introvert. So that's one aspect of it. I step into a challenge, and I actually volunteered to become a team leader because I thought that was what the solution required. And I knew when I recommended it, they were going to choose me to be the team leader. And I willingly said it anyway. But there's a book that I want to read. I downloaded. I haven't even cracked it open yet. And of course, I'm doing it audio wise because I can do it at 150% speed because that's the only way it'll keep my attention when it's self-development type stuff. But the book is called The Mountain Is You. And that's the best thing I could say. My biggest obstacle has always been me and my self-limiting beliefs that I still am working through to this day. And so that's the second point. I used to do performance reviews. You have to do a self-assessment at my job. I've been there 26 years. The first one I did after my Crucible weekend, I actually wrote and told the truth about my accountability, meaning what I did good and what I did not do good. My belief was I will always tell you what I've done well. It's your job to tell me what I didn't do well. But this time I did both. And my boss looked at me like, so we're actually going to have a good conversation this time. I was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, you actually admitted what we both knew was true. And so with clients and prospects, I tell the truth vulnerably and courageously. Oftentimes when I'm doing presentations to sort of drum up prospects in a particular scenario, I will often tell something that most others would not acknowledge of themselves in terms of how money plays a part in my life, where I am smart, quote unquote. I know how to do math, but I still make seemingly illogical decisions about money because of who I am and how I grew up. Essentially, money and meaning for me. Like I'm an optimizer. I bought maybe 50 bracelets before I finally acknowledged I actually wanted to buy a Miami Cuban gold bracelet. And so I probably spent double the amount of money when I could have just bought the Miami Cuban bracelet. And that's just one example. I often say it this way. There was one guy, he comes in, he said something along the lines of, I'm here to talk to you and your team, but I'm very happy. And I don't want to leave my current advisor. And I literally echoed back to him. I said, do you mind if I paraphrase what I thought I heard you say? He said, sure. I said, what I heard you say is, I'm happily married. My question to you is, why are you here looking to cheat? And he just started cracking up. And I said that to him. This is the titan of industry. And he said, you know what? You're right. I'm full of shit. Let me actually tell you why I picked up the phone to call you. And then he was vulnerable. He was vulnerable. And so I would say a mixture of courageous authenticity, courageous vulnerability, stepping into fear. I actually made a commitment to my 2-year group when I did it, and I still do it to this day. If I say no to something, in my head, I can reflect back. I said no quickly because I don't want to do it. I'm afraid to do it, or it's going to tax me, or it's going to push my limits of either organization or long-term whatever it is. I will often just immediately say no. And then I will ask myself, did you say no because of fear? And is there something rational, logical, substantive that would give reason to say no other than just fear? And if the answer is no, do it. And I've been doing my best to do that ever since. And it's hard. I would categorize it as a big picture strategy. I would call it exposure therapy. Do the things you don't want to do, or quite frankly, that scare the bejesus out of me. And I'll learn slowly but surely, and oftentimes iteratively, that this won't kill you. And it's actually making me stronger.
I feel like that's a litmus test that I need to just write on my forehead. Am I saying no for legitimate reasons or because I'm afraid?
Absolutely. I was at a restaurant 2 days ago, and I loathe asking people for help, especially when I don't know them. And so we're sitting down at a table at a restaurant. We realize we don't have enough time to get to our next engagement. And so I need to go up and ask if I can convert our order to a to-go order. And historically, I would have come up with 1,000 different ways to either get my girlfriend to do it or not do it at all, or just wait passively until somebody sees us and then wave my hand. And I said to myself, Garrett, here it is again. You're afraid. And I got up and I talked to people, and I was fine. And I'm getting quicker at doing it. And it sounds like I'm a child. Trust me, I feel very childlike in these moments. But growth is hard. Change is not easy, especially if you're unwilling or afraid to do so. But if you're willing to, again, pursue exposure therapy of false evidence that isn't real, the only way to find out it's not real is to walk to the other side and go through the darkness and see that there is light when you cross that path.
That's right.
And I'm not good at it, but I'm getting better. When my mother died 10 years ago, that first year my father was grieving her death and we're all grieving her death, we had a moment where he vulnerably said to me, "You're my closest friend on earth." When I was going through my divorce, he was my closest friend on earth. And I've occasionally had this thought of, if you die and nobody you knew lived conveniently close to you to just wake up on Saturday and go to your funeral, who would be willing to spend, a plane ticket, a car rental, and a hotel to go out of their way, leave their life, and go to my funeral? And I could only list women, and I could not get past the 5 fingers on my hand other than to use relatives. And I'm sure the list was probably longer than that, but that's what I felt like it was. And I'm happy to say that I can quickly get past 10 fingers with men. And it isn't that I was avoiding men or that I've loved being in sort of community with women. It was just benign neglect in the sense of women, maybe I'm right or wrong, but it's been my experience that women are very good at sustaining, maintaining, and sowing seeds into keeping relationships strong. I never have been. And the only reason I had all women in my life, because those are the ones who kept searching for me as I would go into a different rabbit hole. Men didn't do that and I didn't do that. But now I do it and men do it with me. And surprisingly enough, they're all Crucible men. Why? Because there's this dialogue where you're real with people. You're not bullshitting. How's it going? How are you doing? I'm fine. Everything's okay. I'm going through a divorce, but I'm going to say everything's okay. I don't do that. And I don't want to do that. And, obviously you do it, appropriate to the setting and the circumstances. If somebody says, "Hello, how are you doing?" on the elevator, and you've never met them before, you're not going to sit there and say, "I'm going through a divorce. Will you talk to me, please?" No, you're not going to do that. But I'm authentic and I do it as consistently as I can. And I'm not trying to trauma dump on anybody, but I tell what I'm going through. And surprisingly enough, I found my best path as an introvert and as a very heady, less hardy individual historically. I wish to be different going forward. The easiest way for me to connect with people is to acknowledge my weaknesses, my vulnerabilities, the things that I'm going through, the things that many, and hopefully less and less as the years go by, are unwilling to say.
Yeah.
I say that.
I will say you've talked about your leadership and how it's changed with work. One of the areas that I can see from you being involved in your Crucible weekend is you have leadership not only in the urban community here, but you're also actually on our Crucible board of directors as well. And so you're bringing your gifts and your leadership to a board level. So let's dig into that a little bit.
Sure.
You invest your time with staffing, like you've said. You invest your talent with your board work. And I know that you've shared with me that you do invest your treasure. What moved you to say yes to that level of responsibility within all of those different aspects?
I've never been closer to God. I've never been closer to my purpose, my passion, and my power. I've never had real, deep, authentic relationships with men who will call me if I don't call them and will sustain a relationship as I choose to sustain it with them. And that all draws back to me choosing to go on a Crucible weekend and lean into the work after the weekend is over. The weekend, for me, I won't say for others, it lights a spark in you, but you got to fan that flame or it has a risk of going out. I firmly believe it was God's timing. He's like, you need to address the fact that your marriage is over. And if you go to this weekend before you figure that out, you might try and save it even further. You need to address the fact that you can't be a loner. I often say I'm the Lone Ranger. And a really good friend of mine said, the Lone Ranger had Tonto too. I was like, oh, okay, good one. But all of the things that bring me joy and get me up on a daily basis are because I'm living and I'm singing my song. And I know for sure that would not be true, not to the extent it is today. A job, leveling up, promotions, team leadership. Heck, I'm in sales and I'm an introvert. I challenge titans of industry and I talk to titans of industry on a regular basis and tell them that they might not be doing it correctly. And I verbally and openly say that to them. All of that goes back to my initial weekend and everything and all of the work I've done at Crucible. I'm eternally thankful. They will be in my estate plan.
Yeah. When we look at your role on the board, I know that currently you're the only person of color on our board. What do you want your presence at that table to mean? Not just for you, but for the men and women coming behind you and for the organization as a whole.
Crucible is similar to Chicago in the sense that it's diverse. If you just look at the numbers and mix them up, you go, ooh, this is pretty diverse. On the non-minority side, I want them to know and see and experience that there is a wide gamut of what a Black man or a minority or an urban individual is. It isn't just what you see on TV or the stereotypical tropes you might think. On the flip side, I do my most vulnerable and challenging work staffing urban weekends because I was bullied.
Hmm.
I was bullied when I was a child, and I didn't have the understanding to realize it was because I was a child, not that it was because of the Black community. And so when my family moved out of inner city Philadelphia, I was happy to leave because I didn't want to go outside because I wasn't safe. The last month I was there, I had to stay in the house because they were going to beat me. They were trying to whoop my ass before I left so that I didn't think I was better than they were.
Hmm.
For decades, I felt, and quite frankly, infrequently feel unsafe in all Black neighborhoods. And so I want diversity because it makes me feel safe. And the first time I staffed an urban weekend, I had countless moments where I had to say, stay, you'll be okay. And there was nothing wrong with anyone there, the participants or the staff. This is false evidence appearing real. We're individuals. And if nothing else, I think the thing I've learned the most, especially as a board member, being on the board put me into conversations. And as you might imagine, you don't stop doing your work at the board level either. And so it put me into connection and community and purpose with women for the first time. It put me into connection and community with white men the entire time. And as surprising as it might sound, I live in Oak Park. I work with quite mostly white clients, mostly white colleagues, and I felt comfortable, but I wasn't in community with them.
Hmm.
And kind of like when you're on a sports team or when you go to summer camp, when you do life with people over a weekend, you're in the same bunk and you're eating the same good or slightly less than good food. And you realize that they're individuals. They're not just, a white Republican from Hinsdale or a Black liberal from, Lawndale. You're a person. There was a moment on my first staffing. It was a not an urban weekend where a Black staff man said to another staff man, "You're a racist." And I was like, oh, damn.
Hmm.
My Crucible journey is over. Race and politics has come to the Crucible Project. And then I saw, and I won't be detailed, obviously, I saw how they resolved it. And I promise you, God was all up in that. And I want everybody to be able to communicate in that way.
Hmm.
I pray, and I've stopped asking. I pray that my girlfriend goes through this so that when we become married or when I propose to her, we can communicate in that way because that's the best version of conflict resolution I've ever seen. I mean that. And I'm constantly learning how much I do not know. So I'm learning about the Black side, the white side, the Latino side, the urban side, the suburban side. I was challenged to staff a weekend in Houston, Texas in July, of course.
Oh my
Not the
God.
winter, not the fall, but the summer. And I did accept the challenge, and I've not yet gone down there. So I'm going to go down there. I won't say when because I might have to hold myself to that commitment, but I'm going to go down there. And let's be real. The core reason I didn't want to go is I knew it wouldn't be an urban weekend, and I knew it would be deep South. And that probably scares me more than a fully urban community walking by myself where I don't know anybody. But I'm going to do it because there are many false evidence that appears real in my life, and I need to keep scraping those away.
Well, and like you said, Crucible creates this place where so many different people from so many different walks of life can come together. It's not to strip away the things that make us unique or the experiences that feed into our stories. But when you really start to get down to the heart level, I've done Crucible in Kenya. We have Crucible in Australia. There's not a place that I've gone yet where I can't connect with another Crucible brother or sister because soul work is soul work. And we all have wounds and we all have healing, and God is there in the midst of it.
Jesus was radically inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
The Crucible Project is radically inclusive. This is the best version of, and I'm saying this with air quotes, of church I've ever seen. I can't tell you how many times people walk into church on Sunday and, straighten up tall. They stop cursing the other 6 days they were doing it. And then they walk into this false sense of reality. That's not Crucible. We're going to talk to you. You're going to talk to us. We're going to hold a mirror to you as I hold a mirror for myself. And we're going to help each other. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because that's what God and that's what Jesus wants us to do. He wants us to find more, to join the horde, and to see the blessing and the beauty it is to be a Christian. And even if you're not a Christian, I would willingly do a Crucible weekend as an atheist because it's that good. It is that good. Let go of the labels and just enjoy the growth because it's beautiful.
Yeah. As we wrap up, I want to touch back on one thing that you said before. I heard you say that Crucible will be in your estate plan. So can you just share with us, why do you personally give financially to Crucible? What's the difference between giving to a good cause and investing in something that transforms lives? Because there's so many good causes out there, right? Things that are worthy of our time and our money. And it's not saying that you shouldn't give to good causes, but what's that line? What's the difference between giving to a good cause versus investing in something like Crucible?
Purpose and passion. I am passionate about helping broken men sing their song before they die or take their own lives, quite frankly. A Crucible brother I staffed with twice last year took his life less than a month ago. And so we're still imperfect people trying to live better lives day by day, one decision at a time. But why do I give my time, my talent, and my treasure? And let's be real, when I give my treasure, I'm aware of it. I believe we're doing God's work, and I've seen the blessings, the benefits, the success, the growth, passion, the power in my own life. I am closer to my own children because I have the language to actually speak what's in my heart and heavy on my heart in a way that isn't destructive, counterproductive, or using the power dynamic that is too easy that you can do with a parent and a child. I had the book, The Purpose-Driven Life, probably over a decade. I tried to start that book many a time. I never finished it. I had the workbook, never quite got through it. And then I did our mission second level weekend. And let me tell you, every time you do a weekend, they throw you a curveball. I am very good at predicting things. It's one of my superpowers. I can't predict the Crucible weekend. And on the mission weekend, I was like, they're probably going to do some purpose-driven life kind of thing. And I have a mission. And every time I say it, I say, well, my mission is I inspire others to live courageously authentic lives through connection, teaching, and challenges. And isn't that very unchristian-like to say challenges at the end of that? At least that's what I thought when I was trying to not write it down. And I was like, yeah, but that's what you want to say. I have purpose. I have a mission. And it is to help men, good men, strong men, weak men, successful men, destitute men, addicts, Ivy League graduates. All of us have some aspect of us that is often a wound that we're unaware of, or we're not quite living and breathing life in us the way that you could, and quite frankly, the way that God called us to be. That's why I give my talent, my treasure, and my time. Because I want other men to get what I got. I was on a weekend once, as a participant on Saturday. I judged him to be just as nerdy as I am. And he's literally asking to leave the weekend. And I said, do y'all mind? I had no leadership role whatsoever, but I'd done enough weekends. They were willing to take the risk. I said, do y'all mind if I talk to him? They said, sure. I pulled him aside. I said, can I tell you something? I said, you remind me of me. This weekend is scary, but I'll make you a promise because I think this is going to get through to you. I said, how much did you pay to go to the weekend? I forget what the answer he said. It was not cheap. I said, I tell you what, if you stay through Sunday and you don't think it's worth your time or the money you paid, I will reimburse you half your fee. He looked at me like I was crazy. I said, I will do it. I promise you. I gave him my name and my number right then and there. I will reimburse you if it wasn't worth your time. And literally by that Saturday night, every time he see me, he'd look at me and smile and go, man, this is awesome. Sunday afternoon, he officially said to me, you don't have to give me any money back. That was awesome.
Aww.
And he was going to leave the weekend. The mountain is me. The mountain is you. Get out of your own way. Self-limiting beliefs. And your story may not be mine. So don't feel like if you don't echo or rhyme with how I'm describing my life or the things I deal with and struggle with. I promise you, I've seen mighty men and timid men, as I judge myself to be, all get powerful blessings from these weekends. And if you're willing to light the flame as the weekend does and fan it when you're done, I promise you, you will sing your song. And I want to help men do that.
That is a beautiful mission in life. Garrett, I'm just so grateful for the work that you're doing, that you were willing to go and be a part of it. And now that you're willing to be such a pivotal part of bringing this to other men. So thanks for your time today. Thanks for all that you're doing. And God bless you in your journey.
Thank you for having me.
For more information about our weekends, please go to thecrucibleproject.org. Or if you're ready to get started on your transformational journey right now, you can connect with one of our Crucible certified coaches for a free 30-minute session at thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. That's thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. If you like what you heard, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rate and review wherever you are listening, and don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Thank you for listening.